Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and with the weather being so rubbish lately, I have spent an awful lot of time online and not really out enjoying the cars, which has given me the opportunity to see what everybody's discussing on all the classic car groups, mainly on Facebook. And one of the biggest topics that's been rolling around is the classic car industry is doomed. This is what's going to kill it off this year. Project 2030, whatever. Anyway, in today's video, we're going to be discussing what is really putting the classic car industry at risk in the future. And for me, I think there's one big culprit, and it's parts and the quality of the parts and all the bits and pieces that we rely on to get our cars from A to B and to remain reliable, and more crucially, what draws new people in and keeps them hooked. Because if you break down every time you go out, it's not going to really make you want to get back in the car. I know it's put me off plenty of cars. Now, I've invited a guest onto the channel today, which is Kev. He'll give you a little wave, and we are coming at this from two very different perspectives. I've been in the classic car scene now for less than 20 years, around 15-16 years, and Kev has been in it since, well, before I was born. And I wanted to invite somebody onto the channel to discuss it with me who had a very different perspective, because Kev is from an era where you were able to get parts from your original manufacturers and the quality was very different and the parts manufacturing process is very different. So in today's video, we're going to do a bit of a debate around what we think is holding back the classic car industry, what's putting it at risk, and most importantly, we're going to be discussing some of the good news, because it's all too easy, I think, to discuss doom and gloom and do all the hand wringing and say, oh, you know, it's over. But actually, we're going to be talking about some of the rays of sunshine within the industry and where we think there is perhaps light at the end of the tunnel that will keep some of these cars on the road and what people can learn from. So Kev, for those of you that have never met you on the channel before, give us a little bit of your background and expertise in the classic car, or what was then the modern car industry.
Hello there. Yes, I'm Kevin Hurst. So basically, my upbringing, I started in the motor trade in 1986, as some older people will remember, a youth training scheme person, a YTS boy at that in those days, £27.30, and it was, you did day release, you did a placement in wherever it was. I was a garage. And then you did day release at college. So it was like an apprenticeship, but not an apprenticeship. It was basically a 2-year programme. At the time, there were talk of slave labour. People were hiring people on the cheap and then getting rid of them. But my experience was quite good, to be honest. It set me a path in the motor trade. Now, before that, I'd worked on cars from probably being 6 or 7 years old, working with my dad. We had an old Humber Sceptre that I did quite a lot of work with him, helping him do it, because at the time, in the 70s, before you were born, before many folk were born, cars were very expensive, and you had to buy a car and basically, do it up in inverted commas, because nobody had any money. So you were going to the scrapyard for parts, and just doing stuff yourself. I mean, at one time, you were sort of repairing a car on the weekend for you to get to work on Monday. And it's totally different times now. So the cars were just bangers. I've always loved classic cars, like in the 80s, stuff like this. The MGBs and Triumphs and stuff were just cars that you bought, as MOT failures, put sills on them, sold them, and that's how it was. That's how it was at the time.
We're going to pose some questions to Kev, but I'm also going to share some of my opinions with you. Now, first of all, for those of you that know me quite well and tune into the channel regularly, you'll know that during the week, Monday through to Thursday, I work in a classic car garage in Halifax in West Yorkshire called ADO Restoration, and we specialise in the repair and restoration of British vehicles. We do a lot of minis, we do a lot of, your run-of-the-mill, general, everyday stuff, and we really enjoy it. And so I asked the lads at the garage, and I said, I think, personally, the biggest threat to the classic car industry is the quality of parts. And I said, what do you think? And they said to me, we agree. to an extent. And one of the biggest things that they agree on is, and I wanted to share their opinion on this video as well, is that when you have a part and you buy it new and you fit it to a car, the customer has an expectation that that part will last, and in their head they've probably got an idea of what they think the life cycle of that part is. Now, there are a lot of parts which aren't really meeting any acceptable standard in terms of what you'd expect something to achieve, and what then happens is the customer comes back in and they're disappointed, because they're disappointed in you as the repairer, they're disappointed in the part, and they're disappointed in the car. And also it chips away at their confidence within the vehicle, because when they go out and they break down and the coil packs up for the millionth time, they think, do I really want to go to that show that's over 50 miles away? Because they don't trust the car. And so what then happens is it just erodes the experience for them. They use the car less, it gets through to the next summer, and they think, do I really want this car? Or shall I put it up for sale? And then what happens is that person then loses the passion, loses the spirit. But most importantly is when that person then comes back to talk to other people about classic cars, they'll say, well, I gave up with it because it was unreliable. And it builds that trope that classic cars are unreliable. But I don't think it's the classic cars themselves that are unreliable. I think it's the parts. Now, I recently had an experience, and I'm going to do an overlay of a little picture for you. We, as a friendship group, and I include Kev within that as well, we all use our classic cars very regularly. I drive around in a classic every single day, mostly the Proton at the moment because the weather's been absolutely dreadful and the heater in the Standard is not where I'd want it to be, which is fine. I'm a bit of a wimp this winter because I'm really feeling the cold. And so my best friend Joe uses his Morris Minor all the time, and he really relies on it. And he had an old coil on from the 70s or 80s on it, and it packed up about 6 weeks before this little incident. And he just went online, just bought just a basic Lucas coil, banged it on, and then 6 weeks after putting it on, we drive down to Worthing, and on the way down the coil packs up. I'm like, great, okay then. So you've got this coil on the car that's from the 70s or 80s, that's lasted decades, that's been doing the daily commute every single day. And then you put a new coil on, which you would expect surely to last at least, what, a year, 2 years, or at least a decent amount of time, packs up after 6 weeks. And what does that mean? It means that we were stranded in a live lane, we were without anything, we couldn't get into any position of safety. Being quite morbid, we could have died. Now, for people that are new to the hobby, that could have really put somebody off. That could have really scared somebody. For me, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool, essentially nihilist. I'm quite happy to push on with it. But I don't think that's acceptable. Now, I had a bit of an epiphany over the last few years in that I used to buy cheap parts all the time, and I would spin through them, and I've had some horrendous instances coming back from Scotland, a coil exploding in my engine bay and all sorts of nasty bits and pieces. I've had parts pack up on me, and then I started getting paid quite well at work in a job a few years ago, and I thought, you know what, I'm not playing this game anymore. I rely on these cars every day. I'm too old. It's no longer funny once you go over 30, I think, to sit on the hard shoulder every day on your way to work. So I started looking into better parts, and one of the people that I started using was MGOC Spares. I started using them, and a few other people as well. I bought into... Who did I buy I bought it through MGOC Spares, but who supplied my electronic ignition? Can you remember? It wasn't a cheap kit.
Was it Luminex? Lumination, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. And a lot of people said to me, oh, you can get a kit cheaper on eBay. It'll be, you can get a kit for 40 quid. This is costing you over 100 quid. Yeah. But you know what? Why would I not spend a bit more money? I have never been let down by a Lumination kit. I have been let down by a cheap electronic ignition kit. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of things to discuss in this video, and I need to hone in on some of the questions, but I'm just sharing some of my thoughts as we go. I'm going to fire some questions away at you, Kev. Kev, first of all, topic of the day, do you think poor quality parts are the biggest threat to the classic car industry?
It's certainly one of them. That is for sure. And I mean, can I give an example of the component that packed up with me? I've got a bit of a strange love of Triumphs as well as MGs, Hillmans, and all the other bits and pieces. But I bought for my Triumph Toledo, which unfortunately I've recently sold. I bought a brand new fuel pump, and that fitted the brand new fuel pump. The car started up and ran as it's supposed to do, and then I was setting off to Leeds. I actually had a filming gig in Leeds, which is unusual, but I was rushing to Leeds, and the car absolutely ground to a halt, and I couldn't understand this whatsoever. Looked in the fuel filter, which was a plastic fuel filter, which is one of the things I recommend that everybody puts on a car, because you can see exactly what's going on and going into your carburetor and stuff. So that packed up. Anyway, took the top off. Everything appeared to be all right. Resealed the gasket, put it back on again. Anyway, the car carried on, got me to the gig and got me home. Setting off again just down the road to take the dog for a walk, the car expired. And I thought, what on earth's this? Anyway, it turns out that the fuel pump, I won't say I got it from, but it was a specific Triumph specialist, was pumping too much, and as it was pumping too much, it was over pressurizing everything, and causing the car to have not fuel starvation, but too much fuel, and then the fuel was evaporating, and it was just absolute rubbish. I think the fuel pump did about 200 miles, and then I thought, well, I can't do with this, because I do need a car to be reliable for if I'm using a car as a regular mode of transport, with a wife that sort of likes classic cars but doesn't like breaking down, and I daren't have it breaking down on her. I went on to eBay, other sites are available, and I bought a brand new old stock AC fuel pump. And this AC fuel pump, which was original equipment for the Triumph, was in a dusty old box. It came, and I fitted that, and the car's still running on it now. A much better quality pump that was, I think it was about £10 dearer than the brand new one. But I mean, obviously, I was lucky to find a new old stock pump, and that was it. It transformed the car. So driving the car made it a pleasure experience, rather than my wife saying, "Is this going to get us there?" Which is something you never want to hear, really. So that's one element. I mean, it was what you were saying about electronic ignition before. I have fitted electronic ignitions. Can I say the name? Is it PowerSpark? PowerSpark. I fitted quite a lot of PowerSpark electrical ignition components, and I've had one fail, and I've fitted quite a few of them. So as a ratio, I think that's not too bad. That's the only one I've fitted, really, to be honest. This car came with a brand new PowerSpark distributor, which I fitted, and it's been okay with the car. But I have heard horror stories, and what we said about coils. The Triumph, my little Triumph 1500, in all my years in the motor trade, there's a saying, and the saying is, it's never the coil, because usually it never is. But for the first time in 40 odd years of mending cars, I had a coil fail on my Triumph coming back from Honley Show, where the thing just backfired and ground to a halt. So anyway, fortunately, I've got a replacement coil, and touch wood, it's all right. But what I do, because I don't trust that, I've got an old coil in the boot of the car. Every single car I've got a toolbox, and I carry a spare coil, because you can't guarantee it. I also carry plugs obviously, points and a condenser and a base plate in case the PowerSpark electronic ignition packs up. and a red rotor arm, because the red rotor arms are much better than the new Lucas, in inverted commas, which is used in a green box, which is not very good. The rotor arm, the replacement rotor arms, are black, as the original ones were, but the black component in the rotor arms is carbon to make it black. So of course what happens is the carbon acts as it just earths the distributor, and so you're going nowhere because you've got another, in effect, carbon brush in the distributor top that's going all the way down to earth in the distributor. So I've fitted red rotor arms and I've had one fail in 20 odd years. So, it's some stuff's good, some stuff's bad, but electronic ignition is definitely a way forward with classic cars, as long as you get a good quality one.
You've probably noticed the MGC behind us. Now, if you've been following the channel, you'll know that this has been a labour of love. And Kev, you have bought, we were talking about it, and I made mention of MGOC spares. You've bought so many of your parts for this car, because I know the car came with a lot of bits and pieces already, but all the bits you needed you bought from MGOC spares. Now, I don't know how much you know about MGOC spares. If you've not used them before, oh my goodness, I would really recommend them. I will be honest, sometimes they're not the cheapest. You could go on eBay and buy some absolutely dubious product that's called, like, I don't know, you'll look at the name and you'll be like, it'd be called like Lucky Star something or other, and you'll think, okay, yeah, that is the cheapest. But here's the thing, right, is if I've learned anything, it's pay a few pence or a few quid more and keep your four wheels on the road and not on the back of a recovery truck. I've learned this the hard way. And I really like MGOC spares because they put a lot of due diligence into where they get their stuff from. Like, you can ring them and you can ask them, especially the bits that they make themselves or they've had remade themselves, you can ring them up and they've done everything, right? They've gone out to factories, they've looked at different tolerances, they've looked at different materials. They put as much work and effort and blood, sweat and tears in as the original team at MG, I think, probably did, or maybe more, because I think some of the bits that they're coming out with are actually better quality than some of the original bits that you find, because you look at them and you think, oh, that's actually better. Kev, you have put a lot of time, energy and most importantly money into this car, and you've bought so much from MGOC spares. How have you found the parts?
Yes, the MG Owners Club spares. Most of the components on this car, I mean, as I said before, it came with about 10 boxes full of various bits and pieces. It ranked Xerox boxes, I think it was. You tell how long it was taken to bits. I don't even know if they still go around. Anyway, the most of the components on this car new. In fact, all of the components have come from the MG Owners Club, and I've been very impressed with the quality of them, the fitment of them, and the thought. But the last thing I want to do, so Steph kind of reminds me, I am knocking on a bit. I don't want to be dismantling the car to replace faulty components. So I've been very impressed, and as we were saying before we started filming, 1988 I started in a restoration garage restoring MGs, which is where I got my original interest in MGs. And at that time these cars were still being used as daily drivers. They were sort of coming to their end of their life because they stopped making them in 1980, I think it was. So it's like they were 8-year-old cars then, and we were doing repairs and what have you. And I remember then fitting a clutch on an MGB, and that was a Unipart clutch, so it was like original equipment, and it didn't clear. So I remember having to pack out the slave cylinder so the damn thing cleared, and that was a factory part then. And a lot of the time we were using. I remember another case, fitting a water pump on an MGB from we still could get parts from the main dealers then, when it was Rover Group, wasn't it? Was it Austin Rover? I think it was Austin Rover in '88. But I remember from Can I mention the name? Yeah, it was Lookers in Bradford, which won't exist with BL cars anymore. Well, they don't make them anymore. But they used to come delivering parts to us. And I remember fitting a water pump, again, British Leyland box, brand new, and the water pump leaked. So that was then. So, as time goes on, these cars, the main problem with a lot of these cars is they don't get used enough. So as we had the discussion with Chris about rubbers drying out and seals going, rear wheel cylinders seizing up because brake fluid takes in the moisture and corrodes and whatever. That's another problem that the parts manufacturers have got to deal with. But I've been happy with certainly most parts that are fitted to the car. I think I've had a faulty flasher unit, which can happen to anything. But generally speaking, 10 out of 10. The quality of the parts, how the parts fit, the delivery service, and to be honest, the price is not that much difference really. I mean, I just want to fit it and forget it, to be honest, which is part of the job.
I will say that they are a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm all about us not gatekeeping the decent people that we use, because I think if we spread the word about the good people and give them our business and push them to make more and to expand their ranges, we know that we're going to get the quality that we all deserve. The more that we buy these cheap parts, the more that we feed the threat to the industry and the more that we exacerbate the problem. I know that I'm going to have to change the CV boots on my Morris Minor again this year, right? And I change them nearly every year because the rubbers are so bad. Whereas I've had a look at the rubbers that have been sent for Kev's car in comparison to the stuff that MGOC Spares are making, and it's like night and day, and it actually makes me so cross because I think, well, obviously the technology is out there and the materials are out there. They could be making better, but the problem is every time we buy cheap, we fuel the fire for people to keep making these cheap parts. Now, I know that not everybody is as privileged as me in having a job where they can afford to spend a little bit more and buy the better quality product, but realistically, we should be striving to do that where we can, because the quality is not going to get any better if we keep driving it down. And that is a bit of a problem with Morris Minors. And I will say it as a Morris Minor owner myself, a lot of us are really tight and we do try and drive the price down and be like, oh, I want that cheaper, I want that cheaper. But at what cost? Because every time we demand things are cheaper, there is a casualty somewhere along the way. And you know what it's going to be? It's going to be our cars and it's going to be our hobby. And I think that there are other risks out there to our hobby, things like things that people don't talk about actually. People go on, oh, Labour this, Labour that, Labour are going to bring in MOTs, blah, 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 right? Forget all of that. There are really other things that we should be concerned about. Number one is time that we have. People seem to just demand more and more of our time. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've got less free time than I did 10 years ago. So all of our time is being eroded away. The cost to host events is just going absolutely through the roof. And it's making putting events on prohibitive. The ageing population within our community, the people that volunteer, and again it feeds into this time thing, the people that volunteer to look after our events, to look after our spares for our clubs, they are hanging up their driving gloves. Some of them are passing away, some of them are becoming too ill to be involved, or perhaps they've got drains on their time as well. And so we're seeing less of those lovely people, and that is a real threat to our hobby. And as well as that, it's new properties being built that are absolute rabbit hutches, that don't come with a garage, that don't come with outdoor space to store our cars, to enjoy our cars, covenants on properties that say you can't work on your car outside, tenancy agreements that say you can't work on your car outside. These are the silent threats that we don't talk about. And also an inbuilt apathy. People just turn around and say young people people aren't interested, and then they don't spend any time with the young people in their lives who are so lost, because we've got so much around us in terms of technology. We've got our phones in our hands, we've got our computers at home. There's technology all around us, which means that we can talk to people 24 hours a day. But how often do you sit down and actually have a face-to-face quality conversation with somebody? That is also a threat to the hobby, because you don't get to spend time and find out that someone's interested in your car or interested in what you're doing, and you don't spend that time. But I do think that parts are a really big threat. I do think that, I know that people worry about things like ULEZ and they worry about government legislation, but there are so many other small threats that chip away, that build up to be a much bigger beast than simply the big bad wolf that is the government. If we focus on some of these smaller problems like government legislation, I don't think would be so bad. But one of the wolves that we do need to tackle is the quality of parts. And we do need to champion businesses like MGOC Spares, companies like Luminition that are making really great parts. I'll tell you another company that I really like, PowerSpark. No, not PowerSpark, Powerlight. Powerlight in the West, Powerlight in the West Midlands. Certainly not the cheapest. However, they come with a 5-year warranty. They make bits in the UK. They're a family business, they've been doing it for years. They will stand by their product, and if something goes wrong, they'll put it right for you. You buy these cheap parts off eBay, they're cheaper, but what are you going to do when it fails 2 months down the line and eBay doesn't have your back? You're just going to have to go out and buy another one. So I guess what I want to take away from this today is, and it's been a bit of a ramble, a bit of a chat, is I want your opinions in the comment section below. What do you think is the biggest threat to our industry? Do you think it's parts? Do you think it's legislation? Do you think it's petrol? Do you think it's the ageing demographic? Do you think it's the cost of everything? What do you think is the biggest problem? And also, what do we do to encourage more people to act like MGOC Spares, to keep striving for better quality of parts? Or do you think this has always been a problem? I want to know what your thoughts are in the comments section below. And I'm just going to end on one final light at the end of the tunnel, which is the HCVA. Now, they are doing a massive, I guess what would we call it, a policy or initiative to drive manufacturers, to drive people that use these parts to push for better quality. We need to support that as well, because we need to support it as owners. If you work in the industry, same as me, we need to champion them, we need to support them in doing it. And if you are buying parts and you aren't happy with the quality, you should go back to the people that you buy those parts off, and you should push and say, this is what's gone on, this is the feedback I've got. And if they want you to send the part back, you should do it. You shouldn't say, oh, well, it doesn't really matter. Because if we all work together as a big community and we push everybody to strive for better, this threat could be eradicated within 3 years, I reckon. We could turn it round so quickly, but we've all got to be active and we've all got to care. Kev, what final note would you like to leave on?
Well, I'd just like to say, if we've got time, I'd like to say another threat to our industry and our hobby is insurance for classic cars, and particularly young people. Can I give an example? My son is 24 years old, very handsome, takes after his dad, blah blah blah. Fortunately, he's got his mother's brain, so he's got a proper job. He drives a Ford Fiesta 1 litre Eco, well, they call it Eco Boom now because of an engine problem. But that car is a 150 brake horsepower motor car. It's like an absolute rocket. Compared to this, it would leave it standing. It's like 0 to 60 in about 5 seconds or something ridiculous. And he does 20 odd thousand miles a year in it. Never had an accident, obviously touch wood. He's had an accident done to him, which for some reason is his fault. Some idiot ran into the back of him, which is ridiculous. But I inquired about putting him on the insurance because he's not particularly into classic cars. However, he's seen this car develop and watch a few films, and he said, oh, I really like that car, Dad. And he has reluctantly helped me late at night when I'm trying to do stuff. So I thought, right, okay, well, we'll have it. I'll put him on the insurance, and we can go up to the Dales in it. He can drive it. We can go fishing, and do nice things in the car, which is what I intend to do. Now I've got insurance on it, and it's an agreed valuation. I think it's £24,000, 5,000 miles a year. Obviously not for business cover, but that doesn't bother me. I'll just be using it for leisure activities, really. And the insurance for me at 55 next month, you want to send me a card, is £107 or something ridiculous. That's from the MG Owners Club insurance. But to put Thomas on it at 24, as I say, clean driving licence, been driving since he was 18, to put him on this as an occasional user, it bumps the price up to another £400. So it's £500 now, which is a rather large sum of money. Okay, you could argue you don't pay road tax, you don't have to have it MOT'd, even though I do MOT it. That's a big chunk of money, and that's putting younger people off. I could put my dad driving this, which you wouldn't want to be near him on his mobility scooter, never mind behind the wheel of this thing, and it'd cost me another 20 quid. It's absolutely crazy. The insurance market at the moment is what they call a hard market, which is why it's very expensive, because there's not a lot of people coming into it. But somebody in the classic car movement should do something about insurance for younger people, because that is going to put it off. Oh, by the way, what I should have mentioned, sorry, I know I'm rambling, but for his pocket rocket motor car, for him to drive 20,000 miles a year, that's something like £500 a year, cars left outside and what have you. And that is far more dangerous than something like this, that you can't go as fast as the car. So the insurance is a problem, Steph, I think. And younger people need to be getting into this job, really. And it's great that... Also, another thing, I'm sort of semi in the motor trade. I mean, I'm sort of semi-retired now. But to find good people that can work on your classic cars is harder. I've been to garages have rung me up and said, "We've got a whatever it is, old car. Can you go and sort it out? Because nobody here knows what to do." And it's all components that are adding to a negative. The hobby disappearing. You've got younger people that can't get in it or don't want to get into the job, and you've got older people that are, as you quite rightly say, hanging up the driving gloves. I mean, I've always wanted one of these, and I don't know how long I'll keep going with it. Hopefully a long time, but who knows?
Well, there's a lot to think about there, but I think to end on a positive, every single concern that we have raised could be overcome. However, it's not going to be overcome unless we all bandy together, unless we all actively play a role. If you sit back and you're apathetic and you just moan on a Facebook group all day, nothing is going to change. If you want to make a difference, you have as much power as the next man, woman, child, beast to make that change. You could do it too. All you've got to do is get involved with your club, champion the people that you buy parts that are really good, support your club, support initiatives that help grow our community, and most of all, be generous with your time and chat to people and include people in the hobby. Because remember, it only ever takes one person to get hooked under your influence to keep the level of people in the hobby stable. And if you inspire just 2 people in your lifetime, you double the amount of people that are interested in classic cars. And when you think about only inspiring 2 people, it really isn't that much at all. A lot to think about in this video, a lot we've probably chatted and rambled about. I would love to hear your opinions, especially people from overseas. Do you think you're facing the same problems as us? Are you facing different challenges? Let me know in the comments section below. Hope you've enjoyed this video, but until next time, take care and drive safely.